What happened at Fort Hood was something more than an isolated incident, more than a random act of violence by an alleged perpetrator. It was a terrorist act struck against us as part of the broader war in which we are now engaged.
Senator John McCain spoke Thursday at the Senate Armed Services Committee hearings on the Fort Hood terror attack. Army Major Nidal Hasan is the suspect, of course, accused of killing 13 people in the massacre. And now lawmakers want to know why, as one congresswoman called him, this walking time bomb was even promoted to major last year. This despite weak performance reviews and reports that he was becoming increasingly radical.
Well, is this a case of political correctness gone horribly wrong within our own military? Dr. M. Zuhdi Jasser with the American Islamic Forum for Democracy joins us this morning to talk about some of these new developments. You brought it up last time you were here, and actually it kind of struck me as it really stood out. The fact that you said we can't be politically correct when it comes to these situations.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're turning into our own worst enemy. I mean, here we are waiting for this report to come out. The brass in the military with former Secretary West and Admiral Vernon Clark just put this out, along with a number of admirals, a report called Protecting the Forces, Lessons from Fort Hood. And the word Islam doesn't show up in the whole report. Nidal Hasan's name doesn't show up, and it just says we need to protect them from external threats. And yet it's completely oblivious to the fact that that threat's coming from one ideology, which is radical Islam. And yes, Muslims are going to be part of the solution to that, but if we can't even identify it, we are in such denial. And when asked that in a press conference last week, they said, well, it's no different than radical Christianity, radical, etc. We're not here to discuss Islam. Well, wait a minute, there's an ideology. The military officers, the first thing they learn in the academies is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And that talks about know your enemy. And if we don't know our enemy and know what radical ideologies they're talking to and about, such as a radicalized form of Islam, and actually, like we've discussed before, political Islam is really the source of what I feel is the inconsistency that leads to that. If we don't talk about that, we're wasting our resources and we're actually putting our servicemen at risk.
And fighting the root of the political problems is what you said needs to be done. But are we seeing the military use these soldiers as scapegoats?
I think so. Exactly. I mean, that's really what I'm concerned about is the report. After the report, now they're even talking about possibly court-martialing or prosecuting some of these soldiers that missed some of the warning signs. And I'm sorry, yes, maybe he was promoted inappropriately. We see this. I was in the military, and we see sometimes people, you're afraid to hurt their promotion. That needs to change. But still, the medical officers at Walter Reed are not trained in insurgency ideology. They're not trained in radical Islam. They were just training the guy in psychiatry and medicine. And they weren't able to pick up on these things. And what they're trying to do is say, oh, and politically, publicly, we're fixing the problem. We are addressing it. We've targeted 8 people that missed the warning signs. Well, if he was reprimanded, he would still be in the military, and I don't think he would have lost the opportunity to do what he did.
And tell us some of the signs that they missed with Major Nidal Hasan, because there were plenty of them.
There were. I mean, looking back, he was proselytizing Islam to patients. He was communicating probably 30, 40 emails with this imam in Yemen who is now looking to be a target of our military. He gave a presentation which was supposed to be about post-traumatic stress disorder and ended up being about Islam and the Quran and what drives the radical ideology. And he actually, it was bizarre. There were actually medical officers that have now been talking secretly and anonymously saying, you know what, we thought this was odd, but no one wanted to say anything. And that is the liability. We need to have officers, media, government feel comfortable to start identifying the problem as part of a radical faction of Islam.
Where do you draw the line, though, I guess is a big question of when it's not racial profiling or anything like that when you see someone with these kind of roots?
Well, I mean, this is the issue, is that it's not a race. This is an ideology. There are Muslims of all race, and it's not profiling. We have to have filters of ideology when it comes to loyalty to this country and those that are sworn to protect our country's constitution. And ideology is at its core. So I'm sorry, if there's overlap with religion, we need to have public and private ways to filter that and not be afraid of the ACLU and other mechanisms that might come to protect them. And sometimes they're right, and other times they are going to be misguided protections which are going to put us at risk. This hearing that took place, will something come from it? I think it will, and that I think there are others. Senator Lieberman spoke out this week. Time magazine had a report about how the report missed the discussion of political correctness. And I think out of this discussion, we're going to start to have a national conversation. I mean, you can't miss the signs. It's not just Hassan. You had 5 American Muslims in Pakistan. A month later, they're arrested. You had the Christmas Day bomber. You've had more arrests in 2009 than any year since 9/11. This problem is exponentially increasing, and we can continue to tie our hands behind our back and miss it, or we're going to start having the need for leaders to step up and say, wait, slow down. There is a problem that we need to address, and I think the hearings will start to do that.
All right. Dr. Jasser, I wish we could talk to you longer, but unfortunately we're out of time because it's certainly a topic that I think all eyes are on, especially in light of what's happened over the past several weeks as well. So thank you for joining us this time around.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. Still ahead here, April